And now we're up to purchasing methods. So primary with this particular section, like, okay. Yeah, it's all good. So purchasing methods, primary, what that is making sure that you have your written procedures in place as to like what it is that you're going to do, like what is your process in order to help you determine which methods to follow. And this is really more just procurement one-on-one type of topics, but really this is the part where we go over formal and informal, as well as your small purchase, your micro purchase, your sealed bids, your request for proposals. So here we have a chart that can be found on page 17.38 in the ARM. And really TDA just provided this particular chart to just give just a whole visual view as far as like how to make a purchase decision. Here at the top, you can see that, okay, you have like the standard $50,000 as the simplified acquisition threshold, which that's primarily what it is for TDA. However, it may be set different at your individual districts, which from that standpoint, you want to follow what is stated at your specific district. But here you have it all split off into informal procurement methods going into micro purchase as well as small purchase. And then anything greater than 50,001 or more, or whatever your threshold is, at that standpoint, you were going to split off into formal procurement methods, be it a IFB or an RFB. All right, so purchasing through auctions, just a quick snippet on that on page 1738. If a CE chooses to make purchases through an auction, then be sure that you're applying procurement regulations to that purchase. And that's it on that. All right, so methods, informal procurement, formal procurement, and also we're going to get into non-competitive procurement, which has become really popular recently with the hurricanes and some emergency deals as well too. So we're going to be covering that. All right, so informal procurement methods, starting off with this particular chart where we show just the simplified acquisition threshold. Okay, so it came under that amount. And just really the primary difference, anything between micro purchase method would be equal to or less than 3,500. You may choose this particular method. However, anything greater than 3,500, you would choose the small purchase method. And it's not one of those like, well, with micro purchase, that if it's anything that's 3,500 or less, that's a method that you have to use. It's really just one of those deals that you may use it. So for some of you, for a micro purchase, it may not even apply to you at all, because you may be at a district where most of the things that you order may be above 3,500, or you just may feel more comfortable just using a small purchase method. But either way, it's just one of those options that you may have that the state came up with about 2 years ago. But primarily when it comes to your micro purchase method, it's really an aggregate dollar amount that does not exceed $3,500, must distribute equally among qualified suppliers, as well as price must be reasonable, and Buy American does apply as well too. So just starting off with the very top, when it came to the 3,500, you can see that the whole slide is pretty much blue. We did have some CEs that the main finding was like, okay, you're using the micro purchase according to reviewers a bit, what they would consider inappropriately, in terms of like, okay, we're using the 3,500 just to get out of using that small purchase method. However, what they're really saying here is that you can use it, but at the same time, just wanting you to not abuse that particular method, really. And also, if you're in a situation that, like with the side suppliers, just making sure, like, are you in a situation that, okay, do you have to go to Walmart every single time? And because you're in a rural area? Well, if so, if you have really cost justification for that, from that standpoint, you're really going to make sure that you want to document that particular information as to, like, why Walmart, why every 2 weeks, every single time. And from that standpoint, your documentation may include things like going on to Google Maps and printing out a map of your district in order to determine, like, okay, well, we're here, the closest Walmart is 5 miles away, and then everything else is like 15 or 12 miles away. It's just more cost effective for us to just use that particular Walmart. And so just having that backup documentation to show that, okay, this is why I have to go to this particular supplier each and every single time. Also, just making sure that price is reasonable and that Buy American does apply. And we do cover Buy American in a little bit. Also, you want to make sure that, let's see. Yeah, I mentioned that. Also, just to note, competitive purchasing as well as a cost analysis are not required, but it doesn't stop you from doing one for a micro purchase. That's actually one of its benefits, is making sure that you don't have to do a cost analysis, but it's not required. But the bottom line really for this standpoint is just really making sure you're maintaining adequate documentation to just really support this particular method that is being utilized. So micro purchase, it's ideal for infrequent purchase. It's not ideal for routine purchase. So from that standpoint, if you have something that's a bit more routine, you would really may want to stick with more of your small purchase method. And also, you cannot break a large purchase into smaller amounts in order to justify using the micro purchase method. Any cost incurred as a result of intentional breaking of large purchase into smaller amounts that would be considered unallowable, as well as any other methods that may be utilized in order to bypass using any other purchasing methods. But nevertheless, it's just one of those methods that's really just more of an option. Ideally, most of the time, as a best practice, really and truly, would really be your small purchase method. And with that, at that standpoint, you can get your specifications, you can get your contacts, and it's not anything like you have to do this robust type of work, but rather just making sure you have your 3 sources. And that could be just as simple as just getting a phone call and just documenting that phone call, or sending an email to like different sources to see if you have any type of feedback. And even though small purchase may not be ideal for all situations, micro purchase may be the best method for you. However, small purchase method just in my opinion, for a lot of different scenarios, in a lot of different incidences, because you have more documentation to back up, but also to show that you're having different sources, different prices, and that you're picking the best price, and that you are being responsible with the federal funds that are being provided for you. But it's really similar to that other purchasing chart. I believe this chart was on page 1743. But really, it's receive, evaluate your offers, determine the best price, award your contracts, manage your contracts, and then it starts all over again. All right, so for a small purchase method, really just making sure that that aggregate dollar does not exceed $50,000 or whatever is specific according to your school district. So it may not be the 50 grand, it may be, your threshold may be different. You must have 3 price quotes as well as Buy American does apply, and making sure that you're meeting solicitation and contract requirements, which that's in a whole nother section of our PowerPoint. But really all what that is just making sure that those regulatory clauses, are you using the appropriate ones according to the product and the service that you're looking to procure, as well as definitely just making sure Buy American is there as well. For your 3 price quotes, as I said before, that could be getting on the phone and calling different vendors and having that documentation in place, and just date, time, what it is you're looking for, as well as emails or even just letters or whatever method you want to use to communicate in order to receive your quotes. Formal procurement methods, primarily that is your invitation for sealed bids, as well as your request for proposals. All right, so very similar. If you find that your threshold is above that RFP, is above your 50 grand or whatever your threshold is, then at that point you would want to go with a formal method. And really from that standpoint, it's up to you whether you're looking to do more specific, if you're looking for specifications on a particular product or a particular service, especially like if you're dealing with large purchases such as like equipment, for example, then you may want to be a bit more specific as far as, well, this is what I expect in terms of size. This is what I expect in terms of maintenance service. This is what I expect in terms of warranties and things of that nature. But it's all just the same amount. It's the same process, but making sure you select your method according to what works best for you, depending on what it is. Publicizing, making sure there's adequate time for people to respond, evaluate, best price, manage contract. So that's just really broken down for you on that particular chart. So invitation for sealed bids or IFPs, used for a firm fixed price contract. Really, that's all primarily what you'll be using an IFB for. It's ideal for offers different in lump sum or unit pricing. It has to be publicly advertised as well as awarded in writing. It really is most common and really most effective in terms of like if you have like really clear specifications as well as technical requirements. From that standpoint, you would want to utilize an IFB. Otherwise, if you don't have anything too specific that you're looking for, then you can stick with an RFP. But that's primarily what the big difference is between those two. As far as with advertisement, you want to make sure that you're providing adequate amount of time, especially like if you're sending out for different offers and you have like really specific specifications, you really want to provide an adequate amount of time. That goes back to those foundational practices of procurement in regards to fair and open competition, as well as just awarding and writing whoever you feel is the most responsible and responsive in terms of what you determine is best for you. All right, so invitation for sealed bids, aggregate total amount of the cost for a single contract. This came up in relation to just going back to the review just for a second, as far as there were some things that may have gone over or may have gone under, where maybe more like a small purchase method might have been more appropriate versus doing like a formal type of standpoint. For invitation for sealed bids, a formal cost analysis is required. So making sure you're following whatever appropriate methods that are in your written procedures as it pertains to conducting a cost analysis. Must have 2 or more responsible offers. That was a highlight as well too. For a lot of places, it was really just more like 1. and they were just picking out just really what was best for them. And you can find this writing right on page 1746 and 1748. So it's only 2 pages, but it's right there in the arm as far as having 2 or more responsible offerers. A best practice would be sticking with the 3, but nevertheless, when it comes to the IFPs, it's saying just 2 or more responsible offerers. And as far as with credits, discounts, and rebates in a firm fixed price contract, the winning contractor, you're not required to do any form of credits, discounts, or rebates of any kind to the S&P, as all those are factored into the contract already. As well as, for this standpoint, doing a rubric or scoring tool. This has been brought up frequently as well too. Well, how can I evaluate to determine which product or service is really and truly best for me? Would be this rubric or scoring tool that you would utilize that would list out all of your specifications according to the priorities that you have set. And then once you receive all your offers, you would select, okay, and score according to what this company is able to offer for you. And then from that standpoint, you're able to select the best price that would be for you. And that would be like your rubric or scoring tool. That would be your backup in terms of why you selected the company that you've selected. Okay. All right, so once again, good old Buy American and other clauses do apply according to whatever specific contract that you are writing out for that product. You want to make sure that you're securing your bids. For this is, and when it comes to securing your bids, the bid should be date stamped and stored in a secured place until the time of bid opening. Once it comes time to opening your sealed bids, making sure that the offers are being opened publicly so that possible contractors as well as other interested parties are able to attend, as well as a description of where and when the sealed bids will be open. So just letting those companies know just the time and place so that they can have the option to be present or not. And also, it is recommended by USDA that at least 2 district employees whom are directly involved with the procurement process be present when sealed bids are being opened. Meeting solicitation requirements, which I'll cover that in a little bit, and also just being sure to choose the most responsible as well as responsive offer as well. Primarily, price would be the best consideration. USDA really emphasized that, yes, we do want you to pick the best price, but that don't necessarily mean cheapest all the time. Sometimes cheap isn't the best for you. It's just what is more specific to your needs. And as long as you have documentation backing up that you didn't set things up to where you selected, made sure that they got your award versus other companies. Okay, so requests for competitive proposals. This can be found on page 1749 through 1750. But primarily for requests for proposals, RFPs, specifications and or technical requirements of products and or services to be provided under a fixed price or a fee in a cost reimbursable or firm fixed price contract where offerers submit a detailed offer for providing products or services. So really, just with this one, if you don't have any if you're not looking to do any type of sealed bids, this would be your ideal method that you would be selecting. That's really primarily the only real major difference between that and the other. Nevertheless, making sure that you have an aggregate total amount of the cost for a single contract or a single renewed contract. Formal cost analysis or price comparisons that you're making sure once again you're following that is in your written procurement procedures. Same thing as the IFBs, must have 2 or more responsible offerers, as well as in a firm fixed contract. There are, once again, no credits, discounts, as well as rebates. Once again, as well as it's the same thing as far as like evaluation of your offers as well. And once again, other clauses as well of Buy American do apply. Just some of these highlights are just once again, just some of the things that we found in some of the reviews that when the findings came back, just some of the things that just wasn't happening. But nevertheless, that's one of them. Once again, meeting your solicitation requirements, as well as choosing your most responsible and responsive offer. Okay, and so here overall we have our formal procurement method decision chart. I believe this one is on page, I want to say it's 1750, maybe? I don't have the page here. No? Okay. But either way, let's just give a total breakdown of the formal procurement methods. And here you can see the differences. As far as like the IFB goes, the firm fixed price contract for the aggregate of total cost for products and or services is outlined in the solicitation and contract. Or you have your RFP where you have like your aggregate single or repeated purchase over time. And so that's just giving us the general overview breakdown of the formal procurement methods. 17.46, okay, 17.46 for that last chart. All right, so on page 1751 through 1754, that covers more of your non-competitive procurement methods. Inadequate, competition, sole source, as well as emergencies. And they are stipulations and just certain things that are put in place for these type of procurement methods as well. With these methods, once again, you're still required to keep just a certain level of documentation in regards to your justification as to why you've selected these particular methods. With all of these methods, it does require approval with TDA. I do have their information on that resource page. So in the event, if you're looking to do like a non-competitive procurement method, you can reach out to them on that email address that I have on the front of your resource pages. As well as just, it may be anything just in particular that they may not be any offerers, or just making sure that there aren't anything that is being improperly being procured. And that's the reason behind that documentation. Nevertheless, with inadequate competition on page 1752, let's say if you do have fewer offers than expected, you want to make sure that, you're asking yourself certain questions like, okay, were the specifications too restrictive? Was there limited public advertisement? Was the timeline appropriate to make sure you had enough offers being able to respond to your advertisement? Just being able to just look at certain factors before going along with this method. Also as well, whenever there is inadequate competition, just making sure that promotion for competition was definitely sufficient, and if it was not too restrictive, and just having that backup in terms of showing your advertisement. So you may want to have that as part of your documentation. You may want to have like a calendar pointed out, just showing like the dates that you've given, like once you've released that advertisement, versus the timeline as to, okay, well now there were no responses within this time frame, and I'm able to move forward along with this particular method. Documentation is required. However, you don't necessarily have to have TDA approval for this particular non-competitive method. It is something that they do follow up on eventually once you get to your AR and things, and that's when you would have that documentation nice and ready. But certain documentation would include copies of advertising releases, letters to companies, emails, mailing lists, or even just any type of contact logs as well too. But just anything that can just back you up, just showing that you didn't limit any sort of competition. Okay, so public or unexpected emergencies, primarily for emergencies, and this can be, I mean, anything under the sun. I mean, we can go in many different directions when it comes to emergencies, but these are just a few examples. Failure of refrigeration system and you need an immediate replacement, last minute cancellation of a delivery, a presidentially declared disaster, or anything that TDA may have sent out an announcement authorizing in certain situations, like with Hurricane Harvey recently. They've sent out like a lot of announcements and things on procurement processes concerning that, not just for the folks down south, but even us up here who are even still affected because of delivery schedules and things of that nature. Primarily the approval process, you would submit your request to TDA in writing, and in a super extreme situation, primarily bottom line, number one, I mean, you're gonna make sure certain things are being done. Like, okay, if there's a fire in the school, or if the lights are going out, or if there's just, God forbid, any sort of flooding or any natural disasters were to come our way. But if they do, I mean, first and foremost, okay, make sure the kids are taken care of. But nevertheless, it says in the ARM to call TDA and then later on back your self up in terms of, well, this is what you've done in terms of making sure things were taken care of at your particular CE. Eventually, you will need some sort of written request and things, but it's not just to sit here and say that state wants you to worry about procurement when a fire is happening or we're having NOAA level type of flooding. Okay, so in your written request, primarily all that would include is the description of the emergency situation, products and or services to be procured, supplier, distributor, or manufacturer from whom the product and service will be procured, as well as period of time for the CE, as far as like what time of period does all this covering? Is it just covering a week? Is it covering a month? Is it just for 3 days or just 1 day? After submission, the CE will be informed in writing by TDA. And in this request, it can be email, it can be letter, it can be fax, just as long as it's in writing. Sole source. So with sole source procurement methods, only one supplier, one distributor or manufacturer for the product and or service that is being procured. Making sure that you verify the product and or service can only be procured from a single source and that a single offer does not equal source. So primarily you just want to make sure that really just crossing your T's and dotting your I's on this one, and really just make sure research has been done thoroughly before you're going along with this particular method as it comes to a sole source. Because in this case, in some cases, it may not be a source. You may have other companies out there that do exist, which at that case, it may not be a source. It just could be simply an adequate competition, which if it is, then you would have to follow the regulations for an adequate competition as well. So really the whole bottom line with this one is being really thorough in terms of, is this really a sole source? Because in a lot of cases, it really could just be an adequate competition and just being able to differentiate between the two. So primarily, determining if a product or service is sole source is really just making sure that you cannot accept a statement from a supplier or a particular company that says, yes, we are the only chicken company that absolutely exists, please buy from us. Or the CE must actively attempt to solicit offers from other suppliers, distributors, or manufacturers. So again, that just goes back to just having that documentation showing that you really did reach out, you really did solicit and try to find different offers. Also, special feature cannot become the only factor, as defines a product and a service as the sole source unless the CE can document why this feature is required and not just preferred. So let's say you may have a certain service where, okay, well, it is nice that you may have this particular feature, but that can't be your main reason for going along with that product or going along with that service. Also, just retaining your records as well, to just demonstrate that you made all the efforts that you could in order to select products and or service from other suppliers as well as distributors and any offers that may be out there. Seek approval in writing to TDA. Description of the CE's review of solicitation processes, as well as you're going to provide a description of your actions to ensure that the supplier, distributor, or manufacturer is in fact sole source, as well as documentation that the product and service is sole source. So just really just having that backup as to why you chose that procurement method. Again, a lot of times it's really just going to be if it's not sole source, it just may be inadequate competition. All right, so brand name sole source purchases. And this can be found on page 1753 through 1754. Really just have documentation stating why other brands are not compatible to your current equipment, replacement part inventory, as well as maintenance staff's expertise. And this can come in really handy in the event if you're dealing with any particular software or any particular type of equipment that you may have maintenance crews that just don't know that particular brand of equipment that you're using. So that's something to keep in mind as well. However, you really want to make sure that you're determining that there's more than one supplier, and if so, just making sure that you're following the normal procurement procedures as well. But it's just one of those things just to keep in hand and just keep in mind. However, even if the CE meets the brand name sole source purchase criteria listed above, so let's say you do meet all that criteria, you want to make sure that if there are multiple suppliers, that you still follow your normal procurement procedures in awarding a contract, and all that goes back to TDA. With this particular standpoint, this would really just mean communication with TDA in terms of determining, okay, is this sole source? This is my situation. This is what's happening. This is what's going on. And it's just one of those gray areas, quite frankly, where, okay, you may or may not be able to get certain companies for whatever reason.